The Cleveland Monsters finally have their first playoff opponent as the Belleville Senators defeat the Toronto Marlies 2-1 in the play-in series in the North Division. So I figured it's time for another Monsters Monday as we see how these two teams match up against each other. That's what's coming up today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube, and we're also over on SiriusXM. I also have to let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the hit mobile twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends, download Monopoly Go free on the App Store or Google Play now. So we're doing another Monsters Monday here at Locked On Blue Jackets. We might just become Locked On Monsters for the next couple of weeks because why not? So I've got wonderful, talented friend of the show, Deana Weinheimer, is going to be back. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the Senators and the Monsters match up against each other. We'll have some bold predictions, and we'll also check in with how she's feeling about the newest monster on the block, because I don't believe it was official the last time we talked. So I'm just going to bring Deana in, and we'll get started here. Hey, Deana, how's it going?
I'm great, Jay. How are you?
a little bit of a frantic finish in Belleville there. For a look behind the curtain, we are recording this approximately 4 minutes after the overtime winner by Garrett Pilon before the Belleville Senators to send the Toronto Marlies to their early summer. This was not necessarily the matchup that would have benefited the Monsters the most, I don't think. But I still think that there is, this is still Cleveland's series to lose, you know? So let's kind of get into a little bit of talk about the opponent first, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Monsters. Senators just defeated a Toronto Marlies team 2-1 in their 3-game series, 2 overtime games in there, and then 1 regulation win as well. Garrett Pilon with the series-winning goal. How did the Senators look in this series? Are you worried?
Yes and no. I mean, what really, I guess the things that would concern me the most is how just steady this Belleville team looked. Now, for those that don't follow the Senators very closely, this is basically their first playoff appearance in this iteration. So they are very short on experience as a team. However, they did bring in someone in Garrett Pilon that just won them the series with a great overtime goal that is just playing at another level right now. Garrett Pilon fans know that's not a surprise. But yeah, they have just been really steady. Whenever Toronto, go to my Twitter and look at what happened at the end of the game, and you will see an example of just how the Marlies got really emotional and tried to shake Toronto or Belleville off the game, and Belleville didn't bite. So Cleveland's just going to have to kind of match that steady. Let's just let the veterans do their thing, help control these younger guys, and not try to knock Belleville off, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it feels weird to consider Cleveland the veteran team in this matchup.
Yep.
Just because they are so young, and a lot of their better players are the younger players. They don't really have a ton of those like Rocco Grimaldi, for example. In Chicago is a really good example of a veteran player that kind of controls the pace of play, helps the team out. The Monsters don't really have a Rocco Grimaldi to kind of keep things level-headed. And I think Steve Dangle called it the punk test about 10 years ago, and he was talking about Boston versus Toronto in the playoffs for the NHL. It feels a little bit like Toronto failed the punk test tonight. Yes. They wound Kyle Clifford up until he was mugging guys in the handshake line. Belleville just played their game. And I think they have, and that's the really annoying thing I think about Belleville. And we'll talk a little bit about how the Monsters can do against the Senators in just a minute, because I have some regular season stats for us to talk about. But Belleville is a really annoying combination of, they have that young talent, and they're also really friggin' annoying to play against, because they will just get in your face and they will toe the line. They will get right up against the line and they will stare you down from across that line. And I think you're right. I think Cleveland is going to have to take the emotion out of this one. Cleveland is going to have to not be the bigger person necessarily, but I think if they get stuck into a wrestling match with the Belleville Senators, you know, you're both going to get muddy here.
Yep. I mean, what's working to Cleveland's advantage is, they're going to be rested. So they've had that time to kind of had their, let's again rest up. Let's kind of work this chemistry back together. They're not coming in mad, like maybe like Belleville might be, wanting to show Toronto up a little bit of, well, you took a game from us. We're here to prove something. We're the new kids on the playoff block, whatever. But I think with Cleveland, they've had to toe that line so much towards the end of the season with a lot of their top guys being out. We've talked about this at length. In terms of that, I think Cleveland will be fine, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I want to pull up a couple of so there's a really great website that we've been using over at the Calder Times for our playoff preview pieces, which you can find all of those online at thecaldertimes.com. Go check them out. We'll have one for Belleville and Cleveland up probably today or tomorrow, depending on when you're listening to this. In the regular season, Cleveland won 3 out of the 4 matchups against Belleville. They lost 1 overtime game against Belleville. That was a 2-1 game. So, like, on paper, this team matches up pretty well against Belleville. I think what's going to be interesting is Garrett Peon has arrived in the playoffs. He's currently leading the Belleville Senators in playoff performance. And he is tied for the league lead as well with 4 points in 3 games. So he's a guy that they're going to have to try and contain. But even if you look at against that, Angus Cruikshank had 4 points in 4 games against the Monsters this season. Josh Curry had, 2 points in 3 games. Igor Sokolov had 2 points in 4 games. Like, they've got guys that can put it together, I still think Cleveland has the edge, but it's gonna be interesting to see what happens here, because I think on paper they match up pretty well, but the playoffs are the playoffs, and we just saw Calgary hand Tucson their lunch money.
Well, one thing to look at too is whenever we go back, which players played in the regular season series, a lot of it is the same guys. Whenever we look at the season series, it was a 4-game series during the season, started on November 10th, and they were done with Belleville on December 15th.
Oh, so they haven't played Belleville since December 15th?
They have not.
Okay.
So it's been a while. And that's why I said last week that I kind of wanted Toronto to come through, just because there's a more recent and more substantial scouting report on them. But looking back at the players that actually played in this game, in those 4 games, Carson Meyer, yes, he played in all 4 games, only had 1 point against them. Brendan Gaunce, who right now is still unavailable to them, played all 4 games.
Carson Meyer is unavailable as
well.
Okay.
Yeah. Both of those players are currently unavailable, which is why I'm kind of bringing that up. Okay. Brendan Gaunce, 4 games played, only had 2 points. The ones that were really big in the series for Cleveland, Hunter McCown with 5 points, James Malatesta with 4 points, Trey Fix-Wolanski, 3 points. There you go. Looking at Belleville, again, it's a lot of the same guys that have been playing in the playoffs that they had back then. The only one that might be a bit of a wild card, though, is Donovan Sabrango. He's still a very young player, finally got his first playoff point and first playoff goal here in the first round. So he's got a lot of nice confidence coming in and really growing here over the course of the first round.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's actually, you know what? We'll take a quick break, and then I want to talk, as we always do, I want to talk goaltending, because that's going to be a really interesting matchup, I think. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you guys about FanDuel, because it's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Whether you win or lose, that is $150. Just put a bet on literally anything. You don't even have to win it. Just bet on, I don't know, bet on the Cleveland Cavaliers winning a playoff game, or bet on the Vegas Golden Knights winning their playoff series. I don't know why that was the first team that came to mind, but it was, so it's fine. But on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And I've also got to tell you about Game Time. If you're in Cleveland and you want to go check out a Monsters game, you could do that using Game Time. It's the only ticketing service that I use these days. I think it's far superior to basically any other ticketing service. There's no hidden fees. It's all upfront, so you don't get surprised at checkout. They've got last-minute deals. They've got zone deals. They've got views from your seat, so you can tell whether you're going to be sitting behind one of those giant concrete pillars or not. And they've also got their lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in your section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets, or Locked On Cleveland Monsters, as we are today. We're doing a Monsters Monday. We've got Deana Weinheimer here of the Calder Times, and we're going to talk goalies, because obviously we're going to talk goalies. I threatened that we were going to spend the full 34 minutes of last week's Monsters Monday talking about Jet Greaves, and we didn't, but we could have done. Matt Sogaard for the Belleville Senators has been he's been fine for the Senators. He hasn't been great, and I think that might be the difference maker here. He's allowed 8 goals on 66 shots in 3 games, and he's made saves when it's counted, but I feel like in game 2 especially, he had a few blue screen moments where his brain just turned off for a second. You leave the goal. He lost his bearing a couple of times. There was a couple of goals that I thought, I hate saying that he would want them back, because goalies want all of their goals back. That's just kind of how they work. They're not like, oh, you know what, actually, you can have that one because it was a good goal. They want all of their goals back. But I think this series, he's been good when they've needed him to be, but he has also allowed a few softies that you don't want, especially against a team like Cleveland, who I think are going to victimize that. They're going to take advantage of that. And when you're facing a guy like Jet Greaves on the other end, who doesn't have any playoff experience for the Monsters. The Monsters haven't made the playoffs since acquiring Jet Greaves. Correct. If I am remembering correctly. It's going to be a really interesting matchup. And I think my money's on Mr. Greaves, it has to be said.
Well, in the 2 games Matt Sogaard played in the season series against Cleveland, he has a goals against average of 4.53 and a save percentage of 8.52. Now, the biggest thing that I noticed over the course of the 3 games that the Belleville Senators and the Toronto Marlies played was the defense for Belleville. They helped really limit that Toronto offense, which honestly, at a lot of the times just looked disinterested or like they'd rather be somewhere else, or that they just, I mean, and in my series preview for this, I even mentioned like Toronto just seemed to be basically developing just not necessarily a losing culture, but they were kind of getting too comfortable with not winning games. In game 1, Toronto had 18 shots on goal. Game 2, 28, a little bit better. They won that one. No surprise. Game 3, 21 shots on goal. That one went to overtime. It's in Belleville 1. Both 2 and 3 went to overtime. But with Cleveland, especially during their time where they had a lot of their players out, really had a hard time generating shots on goal. If they generate those shots, the stats say it all. They have a better chance of winning. But with the high shots that Belleville puts on net, Jack Greaves has to be Cleveland's MVP. He has to be that player we know he can be.
Yeah, 100%. And we've seen him step up for big games before. You know, I think you can just kind of look at his NHL body of work this season of, hey, guess what? You're starting tonight, surprise. And then he makes like 48 saves on 50 attempts, you know. So like we've seen him step up before. I think he wins this goaltending matchup. And I think this is going to be a fun series, I think. I think these two teams are pretty well matched up against each other. I want to talk about one more player, and then we'll talk about some bold predictions coming into this series. Because I believe the last time we spoke, Luca Pinelli's ATO signing and ELC signing with the Blue Jackets had not been made official yet. How do you see him fitting into this team?
That's actually a really good question that I really haven't thought a little bit too much about, just because head coach Trent Vogelhuber is back to having that embarrassment of riches. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially for game 1, for him to get back to that core group. Yes, Meyer and Gaunt's unavailable, but to have that core group ready, see how they do, and then he can start to slot in other players to keep, knock on wood, injuries down, let people rest. I mean, it's a nice addition. It's just, where may he fit in? Definitely think they're going to try to pair him up with some more veteran talent, but you never know. If you maybe get him on a line with, say, a Luca Del Bel Baluz and a James Malatesta and let the kids have fun, that could be really, really good to watch. But I think Trent Vogelhuber might take a little bit more of a conservative approach to start.
Yeah, he feels it's tough to say in terms of because AHL lineups change basically nightly, you know, and we see that in terms of, it feels like there's no consistency in AHL lineups, and unfortunately that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. You see it a little more with teams that are losing more than they're winning because they're just trying to get something going, but I feel like Cleveland has a couple of stock lines that they go to, and then everyone else kind of fills in around that, or they have a couple of guys that are like glued together. If that makes sense. So, like, you've got to imagine that Trey Fix-Wlansky and Owen Sillinger are two of those guys that are glued together, and then they find a guy to play in between those two. I think they have an opening in that top 6, I think, with Gaunt and Meyer. Gaunt and Gaunt and Meyer out due to injury. I always get Carson Meyer and Tyler Angle mixed up, and I don't know why, because they're very different players. But with both of those guys unavailable in terms of Gaunt and Meyer, there's your 4th and 5th highest scorers for the season. You know, I like the Del Bel Baluz Pucha Malatesta line. I think that's a lot of fun, but like, there's definitely an opening in that top 6, and I think why not try Pinelli in the top 6? See what the kid does. You can always change it up later, you know?
Right. And one thing to remember too, with Owen Sillinger, he has been I think I talked about it last week, that utility player, the Swiss Army knife. He has played all 3 forward positions at one point or another during the season. He literally can do it all. So if they maybe need to switch a line up. Don't be surprised if Owen Sillinger's the one that's bouncing around just to fit in. Okay, we need a left winger because it's not working here. We need to fit another right winger in. He will be the guy that really moves around a lot.
Yeah, Owen Sillinger is the Boone Jenner of the Cleveland Monsters. I remember, and I've told this story on the podcast multiple times, or I've told this stat, really, it's not a story. There was a few seasons ago, it was either Brad Larsen's first season as head coach or John Tortorella's last season as head coach. Boone Jenner played every single position on every single forward line. So he played he played on the first, second, third, and fourth lines at left wing, center, and right wing. He played all 12 positions. It was wild. Just a truly bizarre stat that I think about a lot. And that's what Owen Sillinger kind of is. So yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be surprised to see him bouncing around the lineup. But he's a guy that when he's on, he is on. You know, I think you can't discount, like you said, Hunter McCown, who I believe is recently healthy again, if I am not mistaken.
He is.
He had 5 points in the season series against the Senators. He clearly enjoys playing against them. Look for him to make an impact. James Malatesta, we've talked about. There's just, like you said, there's such an embarrassment of riches. I literally just said this. You know, I would love to see Luca Pinelli in the top 6. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on a lower line. Kid's 19 years old. It's his first professional. Game 1, if he makes it in the lineup, will be his first professional hockey game. Don't expect miracles from this kid. That being said, if he can take advantage of playing on a lower line and getting a weaker matchup, watch out. Because this kid has that Trey Fix-Wolansky energy. He has that Gavin Brindley energy of, I'm going to skate around like the devil and be a pain in your butt and also put the puck in the net like nobody's business. He's got a hell of a shot. He's going to be really fun to watch. Monsters fans should watch out for Luca Pinelli if he takes the ice during game 1.
Honestly, that would be a nice matchup against Donovan Sabrango.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's going to be fun to watch no matter who he's matched up against. But that's the fun of this game, I think. That's the fun of the AHL, is that you see sometimes guys playing on the fourth line or the third line, and they are future NHL players, and they're playing on the fourth line in the AHL because that's how the lineup works. I feel pretty confident about the Monsters' chances in this series. I'm going to knock on wood real quick because my hockey powers can only be used for evil. We're going to take another quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to do some bold predictions for the series and also some regular predictions, but the bold ones are going to be more fun, I think. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Monopoly Go because we gotta talk about it. I know what you're saying. We've already talked about it. You talk about it all of the time, Jay, but it's just so good. There's so much good stuff in this game. You can team up with your friends for time tournaments. You can build on each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so many things to get. I love a game where I can collect things. I love to catch them all. I love a game where sometimes I get a set of Pokemon. It's fun. And Monopoly Go offers me unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. They've got playing pieces to travel the boards with. They've got hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. They've got unique mini games like digging for treasure. They've got a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new events that can help you win big. Things like massive multipliers for everything you win, or rent frenzies where you get extra money just by landing on someone's token on the board. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on the Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Welcome back to Locked On Cleveland Monsters, as we are today. Their series starts Wednesday, the 1st of May. I don't know how dates work.
The 1st of May.
In Belleville. How is it already May already, by the way? So the first 2 games will be in Belleville. The last 3 games will be in Cleveland. They got a couple of days still before the fun starts, but let's have some fun doing some predictions. So Deana, do you what's your wild out of left field prediction for something crazy that happens in this series?
For something how, like, are we talking crazy? Like, the moon is literally made of cheese?
I think something.
Or
So why don't we do one like slightly out of left field prediction, and then I want to do something that, like, if you get it right, will make you sound like you can see the future.
okay, something crazy that might happen is Jack Greaves only letting in one goal each game. That's not my crazy.
That doesn't feel too crazy to me. That feels extremely realistic. But I like it. I'm always in support of Jack Greaves' predictions. In terms of predicting him to do well. What's your "the moon is made of cheese" prediction?
Nick Blankenburg getting a hat trick.
Incredible. If Nick Blankenburg gets a hat trick, you heard it here first.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to bookmark this episode to run it back when the series is over, just to see. I think my bold prediction is I think Travis Skolansky gets a Gordie Howe in one of the games. I don't know which one, but that's the feeling I get. I think he's going to get a Gordie Howe hat trick, which for those of you, I assume most of you, or I assume everyone here, if you're listening to Locked On Blue Jackets, you know what a Gordie Howe hat trick is, but that is 1 goal, 1 assist, and 1 fight. We don't see Travis Skolansky drop the gloves all that often, but he's definitely got that dog in him. So that is my bold prediction for this series.
Who would he fight, though?
Who
Who would he fight, though? That's what I want to know.
Literally anyone. No, honestly, I could see him getting into it with like a Tyler Clevin, maybe, or
I don't know. I was drawn to Zach Oshchapuk.
Yes, that was the other guy. That was the other guy I was thinking of. Like someone who doesn't fight a lot, but does have that kind of edge.
Yeah.
Angus Crookshank might be good for it. He has I don't know how many fighting majors he has this season, but he's got 60 penalty minutes. So like he loves to do that. He has at least 2, 3, possibly 4 fighting majors this season, based on a quick scan of the stats. And I'm just gonna flip over to the series matchup. In terms of who was the most Roby, I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm so sorry. I should have prepared it beforehand. Roby Jarventi, who I don't believe played in this playoff series against the Marlies, unless I am mistaken, and had 14 penalty minutes in the season series against these two teams. So look for him to be a little bit of a pain in the butt. Let's finish off with just some straight up and down predictions. Who wins the series in how many games?
I'm going to go. So this is a best of 5.
Yes.
So they have to win 3 games. Belleville's pesky enough. I could see Belleville taking it to 5, but Cleveland winning 5, because the home ice advantage for the last 3 games is going to be huge. There's nothing like the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse when it gets filled to the brim with people and everyone's excited. So I'm going to say Monsters in a full 5.
I'm also going to say Monsters. I agree. I think that home ice advantage, I think they can steal 1 in Belleville, and then I think they come back to Cleveland and just finish the job. So I'm going to go with Monsters in 4. I think they win the first game. I think they lose game 2. Split the series, and then I think like you said, they go back to the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. There's 12,000 screaming Cleveland people in there. That's a tough building to play in. You know, they lead the league in attendance year in, year out, and I don't know that Belleville can hold up against, like I said, against 12,000 screaming Ohioans. But yeah, I think Monsters in 4. I was going to ask you who you think is going to score the series winning goal, but you know what? Actually, yeah, let's do one more prediction and then we'll finish it off here. Like, who scores the series winning goal for the Monsters? Since we predicted Monsters in 5 or Monsters in 4 in my case, who's scoring that series winning goal?
I'm going to go with either Roman Ashan or Luca Del Belbaluz.
Oh, you're going an underrated goal scorer. I like it. I like it.
Yep.
In the same way that, like, and this is kind of a little bit outside of the topic here. I watched most of the Tucson Calgary series against the Roadrunners and the Wranglers, and I initially picked the Roadrunners to win that series because they look better on paper. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, man, how do you bet against a guy like Dustin Wolf? And in a similar vein, how do you bet against a guy like Trey Fix-Walensky? And I think that's just like, yours is kind of the more out there. Yours is probably, you'll get more money from the wonderful people at FanDuel if that bet lands. But the smart money to me feels like a Trey Fix-Walensky goal is always a safe bet, you know?
Yeah. The thing about Roman Ashan, though, is to me, he's the guy you don't count. I mean, of course, Trey Fix-Walensky, never count him out. But, man, Roman Ashan, when they needed somebody to step up, like you do in the playoffs, oh boy, did Roman Ashan answer that call, from being just a feisty young player to needing to give space to his teammates. Whatever you needed Roman Ashan to do, he has bounced back from his time in the ECHL earlier this season. He is a clutch performer. I'm feeling good vibes from him right now.
Yeah, the series winning goal is either going to be the sickest goal you've ever seen or the stupidest goal you've ever seen, and there's just no way, there's no real way in between those two things, is there? For people who want more Monsters playoff coverage, or hey, maybe just AHL playoff coverage in AHL playoff coverage in general, where can people find you and your work online?
Well, you can check out the super talented team at thecaldertimes.com. We've got coverage of every single playoff series there. You can find us on X at the Calder Times. We're also on Facebook, same thing, the Calder Times. And also you can catch Jay and me over on Calder's Calling, where we will have so much more playoff coverage, especially surrounding the Cleveland Monsters.
Yes, tune in this week for our 45-minute special on Jet Greaves and why he's the best goalie in the league. No, but we will be talking about the Monsters in this week's edition of Calder's Calling. So make sure you stick around for that. If like I said, Blue Jackets aren't in the playoffs, you might as well care about the Monsters because they might do some fun stuff. I don't want to go too far, but I am getting 2016 vibes from these guys. So just gonna knock on wood.
I said last week, I would put this team up against them. Like that team in their prime in the playoffs versus this team, I would absolutely put them up against them.
Yeah. And that's it. That's all we've got for today. Tomorrow we are going to what are we going to do tomorrow? We are going to do probably another player review. I haven't decided who yet. Maybe we'll talk about Zach Werenski and the season he had for the Blue Jackets. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jacket. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email us at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. I don't know why I said us. It's me. I'm the only one reading that email. You can email me over there. You can also find us on Instagram at LO_Blue Jackets. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, over on YouTube and on SiriusXM. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.